Well, we'll go ahead and we'll just introduce ourselves while people are logging in here. My name is Nicole O'Connor. I'm an elementary teacher here in the RVA. This is my 4th year teaching in the RVA, and I've taught for 9 years overall. Before teaching in the RVA, I taught first grade for 5 years in a brick and mortar classroom. And talking about race with young children, and learning about social justice is something that's always been really important to me. I've attended several trainings over the last couple of years to just become more educated about those topics. And back in 2018, my husband and my husband actually teaches for the RVA as well, we adopted our son from Tampa, Florida, is where he was born, and he is actually Black. So in adopting transracially, we really worked hard over the last couple of years to just learn more about race and racism and navigating that together, and how to help our son grow to be a successful, happy human being, and how race affects our lives every day. And so we've really learned a lot since adopting him as well. And in my free time, I like reading, taking walks in our neighborhood, and just being with my family. So I will flip to the next slide here. And I think Mrs. Schmall, you are up next.
Well, thank you, Nicole, or Mrs. O'Connor. My name is Trish Schmall, and I have been teaching a total of 19 years already. And this is my 4th year with the RVA. I am at the middle school level. And this year I happen to be teaching quite a few different classes: language arts, math, history, and technology. So I'm pretty excited that I have the opportunity to teach so many different types of curriculum. So I have really started to become more interested in learning more about how I, as a teacher and as a mother, can be more of the solution to what we have been seeing currently in in the news and in our communities, and really wanting to learn all that I can to help my students and to help my own children really navigate this difficult time. And so when this opportunity was brought to my attention to be part of this mentor series tonight, I was really excited to be able to participate, because I feel that it's a really, really important topic. So thank you for allowing me to be part of this. For things that I like to do in my spare time, my family and I, if we could travel more, we would, and we would certainly head to Disney. It's one of our favorite places to go. We all feel like we can be a kid when we're there. But otherwise, we enjoy camping, four-wheeling. We like to play every game you can imagine right now, being that we're at home more often. So board games, card games, we like to watch movies and just listen to music, dance, and just have fun around the house, since that's kind of where we're all at right now, right? So again, thank you for having me, and I look forward to any discussion that we have tonight. I think we're headed to Miss Smith next.
Awesome, thanks. Hi, everybody. My name is Allison Smith, and I am an English teacher here at the high school. I have been with the RVA for 2 years, but this is actually my 8th year of teaching. I am currently getting a master's of educational psychology through UW-Madison. So this is social justice is a topic that is near and dear to my heart, and just being a more culturally responsive educator and helping all of our students feel like they have a space that they belong is really important to me. So that's why I am here tonight, and I'm happy to share with all of you. A little bit about me outside of school and teaching is that we got a golden doodle puppy in July. His name is Lincoln, and he is the light of my life. He's my favorite thing in the world. I've always wanted a dog. So we've been just diligently trying to train him to be a respectful dog. That takes a lot of time and energy and patience. have a lot of patience for students, not really for the dog. And also in my spare time when I'm not training the dog or hanging out with him, I do enjoy reading, and I am obviously studying a lot for grad class, but I also really love cooking. So that's what I enjoy doing outside of just the school day.
Awesome. Thanks, Allison and Trish. Okay, I'm going to go back to the beginning here. We had just a couple overview slides to show you to start, and then we'll kind of dive into each of our grade levels and give some tips for talking about race and racism with different age students or children. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with just a brief overview of the importance of discussing race in your home, and we're going to break it down into grade levels. We're going to give you a little time for reflection at the end. And at the very end, if you have any questions or things you want to discuss with us, we have that built into the end of our time here today. So some of our goals were to talk about race and racism with your child in an age-appropriate way, to learn how to diversify the texts and the resources that you are using in your home as part of your virtual schooling, to learn about honoring cultures that are different from your own in a way that's respectful. And then to continue to educate yourself on race and racism as an adult, and to learn how you and your child can work to make our world a better place for all people. Learning about race and racism is a really important thing. But I think the other thing to really note too is that that's not where we end. We learn about race and racism to be able to take action and support all communities, and to make sure all people are included and given equal privileges and access. So one thing we do want to, say as a disclaimer before we start is, we're three women who identify as being white. We're committed to anti-racism work, but we're bound to get things wrong sometimes, as we all do. And as Maya Angelou once said, you do your best that you can until you know better. And then when you know better, you do better. So you have to make the decision about what discussions and resources are going to be most appropriate for your family and your children. So we're going to make some suggestions. We're going to talk about things that we feel are great resources. But, at the end of the day, we ask that you preview anything that we suggest before talking about it or presenting it to your children. That does become a very personal decision for your family too. So I'll skip ahead here, and actually I'm going to stop screen sharing for just a second, because we're going to start with, and actually let me get my slide up. We're going to start with just a little video to kind of set the stage for why talking about race is important. And it comes from a TED Talk about what it takes to be racially literate. And I'm going to share my screen again so that hopefully you can hear the volume of the video. When I start it, if the other presenters can just give me a thumbs up if you can hear it okay. So we're going to watch this clip from a TED Talk that's from 2017, and the speakers are two recent high school graduates. And they talk about two different key gaps that they identified when it comes to understanding race. And they talk about it in the context of the heart gap and the mind gap. And I think that that's such a great framework, especially when you're talking with children about how to understand race. So we're not going to watch the full TED Talk here because it's about 12 minutes long, and that's too long for what we want for tonight. So I'm going to do a few short clips of it, but the full TED Talk is linked here on this slide, which you'll have access to after today. So feel free to go watch the rest on your own time as well. So you may have to adjust your volume on your own computer if it's too loud or too quiet, but I will start it here for you.
There's deeply personal stories and pairs. 4 years ago, we really thought we understood racism. Just like many of you here today, we had experienced and heard stories about race, about prejudice, discrimination, and stereotyping, and we were like, we get it, racism, we got it. But we weren't even close. So we decided that we had to listen and learn more. We talked to as many random people as we could and collected hundreds of personal stories about race, stories that revealed how racial injustice is a nationwide epidemic that we ourselves spread and now can't seem to recognize or get rid of. We're not there yet. Today, we are here to raise our standards of racial literacy, to redefine what it means to be racially literate. We want
everywhere across the United States for our youngest and future generations to grow up equipped with the tools to understand, navigate, and improve a world structured by racial division. We want us all to imagine the community as a place where we not only feel proud of our own backgrounds, but can also invest in others' experiences as if they were our own.
We just graduated from high school this past June.
And you'd think after 12 years, somebody in or out of the classroom would have helped us understand,
At a basic level at least,
the society we live in.
the truth for almost all our classmates is that they don't.
In communities around our country, so many of which are racially divided,
If you don't go searching for an education about race, for racial literacy,
you won't get it. It won't just come to you.
even when we did have conversations about race, our understanding was always superficial. We realized that there are two big gaps in our racial literacy.
First, the heart gap, an inability to understand each of our experiences, to fiercely and unapologetically be compassionate beyond lip service.
And second, the mind gap, an inability to understand the larger systemic ways in which racism operates.
First, the heart gap. To be fair, race did pop up a few times in school growing up. We all defend our social justice education because we learned about Martin Luther King Jr. and Harriet Tubman and Rosa Parks. But even in all of those conversations, race always felt outdated, like, yes, slavery, that happened once upon a time, but why does it really matter now? As a result, we didn't really care. But what if our teacher introduced a story from the present day? For example, how Trinaya told us in Pittsburgh that
My sister was scrolling through Facebook and typed in our last name. This white guy popped up, and we found out that his great-great-grandfather owned slaves, and my great-great-great-grandmother was one of them. My last name, it's not who I am. We've been living under a white man's name. If slavery didn't happen, who would I even be?
now it feels relevant, immediate, because a connection to slavery's lasting legacy today is made clear, right? Or what would happen? Throwing out just the statistic, just the facts alone.
So I'm just skipping ahead a little bit. She gives a few more examples that they had interviewed people about, but I'm just going to kind of skip ahead to this next section here.
Disconnected from real humans can lead to dangerously incomplete understanding of those facts. It fails to recognize that for many people who don't understand racism, the problem is not a lack of knowledge to talk about the pain of white supremacy and oppression. It's that they don't recognize that that pain exists at all. They don't recognize the human beings that are being affected, and they don't feel enough to care.
Second, the mind gap. We can't ignore the stats either. We can't truly grasp Ronnie's situation without understanding how things like unjust laws and biased policing, systematic racism has created the disproportionate incarceration rates over time. Or like how important that we proactively co-create a shared American culture that identifies and embraces the different values and norms within our diverse communities.
To be racially literate,
To understand who we are so that we can heal together,
we cannot neglect the heart.
or the mind. So with our hundreds of stories,
So here they go on to talk about one of their big projects is they actually put together a book called Tell Me Who You Are, and it's the stories that they've collected about people and race all over the country. So I have not read this book. I have seen it. So it'd be definitely something to check out and see if it's interesting. We really thought that this really reflected a lot of the importance of talking about race and racism. And I think that context of the heart gap and the mind gap is a really great perspective to take when thinking about race and teaching and talking about race. So I'm going to talk a little bit now about some elementary level like tips or things to talk about. And one of the things that's really important to start with, I think at any level, but especially in in the lower grades or with young children is really defining key terms, things like race or bias or stereotype. Having, visuals and clear definitions of some of those things that we, take for granted, that we may think we know what that means, or, we have preconceived notions about what those words mean, are brand new to most children. And so really having a clear definition for those can be helpful for starting out. One of the biggest things to do in your home with young children is to think about diversifying the texts and the other media that you're consuming in your home. So one of the things that I linked here are some of the new diverse picture books that will be released this coming year, and then a list of some of the best diverse picture books of the past year of 2020. And I've read several of them on this list for 2020, and I'm really excited to look at some of these new ones coming out this year. But one thing to know too is you do not need to buy these books for your home or have this huge library within your home. Start by finding some at your local library. One of the things I love to do is, when I see a new book is coming out, I will go and request that from my library. We will check it out and read it from the library first. And if we find it's a book that we really love, that we think we're going to read over and over in our home, those are the ones I choose to purchase for my family. When you can actually be in libraries and spend more time browsing again, one of the tips I've seen too is to encourage your child to find more diverse books. Let them know that, pick out at least 2 books that have characters who don't look like you every time you visit the library is one way for a young child to try to find diverse books in the library. And then finally, in terms of finding good books, I use a lot of social media to find some new books, and I follow some different diversity bloggers who are experts in children's literature. And I linked a few accounts that I follow there on Instagram that really post some great ideas, and they also review some of the books so that you can get a sense for what they're about before you would purchase or get them from the library. I wanted to include just a slide of some of my favorite books that we have in our home. So my son is 2.5, and we have read all of these books in our home. They're great for young kids, even through elementary school kids. So with teaching first grade social studies this year, I have read most of these books in my social studies class as well. If you use Epic books with your kids, I know A Boy Like You and A Girl Like You are on Epic. I think This Is How We Do It book is available for free on Amazon Prime if you have Amazon Prime. So there's a lot of ways you can even read these for free in your home, but these are just some of our favorites. The second part of talking with elementary students about race is to teach specifically about what race is and about melanin. So by not talking about race and differences in your home or in your lessons, we subconsciously teach children that these topics are bad or that we shouldn't discuss them. We're not creating a space to have these discussions in our home. And we know race is a thing that's challenging to teach about. Sometimes you feel like you need to be perfect and know exactly what to say before you talk about these things. But I think it's important to have these honest conversations with your kids where you admit when you don't know something and you work together to find those answers. And you teach kids how to find out if a source is reliable. Where should you go to find information that you can trust? And like I said, having that open dialogue as just a practice in your home. And then finally, one of the things that's really important, especially for young kids, is young kids often have a lot of questions about why are people's skin different colors? And so people's skin are different colors because of a pigment called melanin that you have in your body. So melanin is what gives us our skin color. And for people that have more, their body creates more melanin, your skin is darker. If your body creates less melanin, you have lighter skin. And so talking about some of those, scientific parts of what makes skin color, can be really important for kids too to understand. And then I just linked a few books here on this slide that are more specific about race or talking about skin color. The ones on the previous slide are just more books that have diverse characters, but they don't necessarily discuss race or racism within the text. These are 3 books that really do a great job of talking about skin color or race or racism with young kids. And then my final tip for elementary age kids is to, have that open dialogue in that space to teach about true history and discussing current events. We want to teach kids a full perspective on history. And often that may be different than what we traditionally learned in schools, when I was in school or when you were in school. So introducing kids to words like equity, equality, freedom, using those words in conversations in the context of history, in the context of current events, and in other subjects too, other books that you're reading. And when you're studying history or those current events, one of the things to really think about is whose story is being told in that section of history or that book that you're reading. Whose voice are you hearing and whose voices are being left out? Teaching kids to critically think about the stories that they're hearing and the way that those stories are being told is really important. And I linked a great resource on here. I have it pulled up on my computer too, and I was just going to show it to you really quickly before I pass this on to Mrs. Schmall. But it's this teaching tolerance framework. And on this website, if you go here, you can download a full free PDF of different ways to teach about American slavery. And one of the things that I found really helpful, and depending on the age of your child, you could show these videos to your kids, but I think it's really just even useful as the teacher or the home mentor. For each of the sort of concepts that they teach about, they have a great video where a professional scholar talks about that concept. And usually they're pretty short, like 3 or 4 minutes. And it just gives you a really good overview as the teacher of what you're talking about. And I've learned a lot from watching some of those videos as well. So those are kind of my key tips for those elementary age kids. And I think the biggest one that you're going to hear from all of us, regardless of your grade level or how old your kids are, is just setting up that environment to have those honest and thoughtful conversations where kids feel comfortable asking questions. So we will take some more questions and comments at the end if you have other things you're wondering about from us, but I will pass it over to Mrs. Schmall now, and she can speak a little bit more about middle school age students. Mrs. Schmall, did you want to screen share so you can flip through the slides, or do you want me to just keep flipping through?
I can screen share. Sure, okay. I can do it. Thank you so much. Yeah. Thank you. All right. So are you able to see my screen okay? Yeah, perfect. Great. So thank you so much, Mrs. O'Connor, because everything that you have mentioned is so critical, really, truly for all of our age levels that we're going to be talking about today. And really, families are our first teachers, right? No matter what, moms, dads, grandmas, grandpas, aunts, uncles, big brothers and sisters are all our teachers. And so really having that dialogue within our own home is so important to this topic. One thing that I've thought about since, looking a little bit more into this is there has been a mission for many years now on how to approach the idea of bullying. And we have worked hard in the schools to teach our students how to address this if it were to happen to them, or if they were to see someone else being treated this way. And because this here, race and racism is can be such a difficult topic, we really haven't necessarily done that, but so much about what we've learned about, how to really advocate for ourselves, or, how students should really advocate for themselves and one another in regards to bullying can be extremely important here as well. So kind of keeping that in mind, that a lot of the same words that we used for that particular topic can be used here as well. And the other thing to remember too is that there's a big difference between someone that's intentionally trying to cause hurt or trying to intentionally say something that is, disrespectful, compared to someone that doesn't quite know better yet, doesn't quite understand. And so we're going to talk a little bit about both of those areas. So truly the first thing that we need to do in our classroom settings, as well as our home setting, is to create that safe area, that safe environment where a child feels that they can bring something up, they can talk about something maybe that they did see or they did hear, and really being respectful and supportive as they do bring that up to us. And really also, if it's a conversation that we ourselves are going to want to start with our kids, really kind of preparing ourselves ahead of time, right? Which Mrs. O'Connor kind of already had mentioned, doing a little bit of research ahead of time so that you might have some of those answers to those questions that they'll be asking, but also remembering that if you don't have the answer, it's okay. You can find the answer, and doing it together sometimes is really helpful. Now, at the middle school level, so many of these kids have seen things and heard things already, and they've stuck up for one another already. They've been around, they've been alive long enough to realize oftentimes what sounds right, what seems okay, and what doesn't. And so I'm really proud to say that oftentimes at this level, you start to see, and I shouldn't say at this level you start, because there are elementary students that do as well. But middle school students are so much more aware of what's happening outside of their home as well. They're more aware of what is taking place. They either read it in the news, or they read it online, they see the news. They have some concerns about what they're seeing. And so, really allowing them to come to you, to a teacher, whenever they're feeling the need to ask questions or open up about some concerns that they might have, knowing that this time period is rather challenging for adults, even, for us as adults. So can we imagine what our children are thinking and feeling during these times when they're hearing bits and pieces of things and aren't quite sure what is really truly going on? So again, a few things that are some things to think about would be to, if they do have questions and you're not quite sure what those answers are, to jot them down and like I mentioned, maybe research them together, especially at the middle school level. Acknowledge that it's really a process to learn about race and racism. We won't have all the answers right away. We're always learning. I mean, that is being a lifelong learner in whatever we do. So that is just the way life is to always evolve and grow. And really, for me growing up, I believe that the majority of us felt that it was best to be what we call colorblind, where we don't actually even notice that there is someone next to me that has a different color skin. And that was me as a high school student. I played on the basketball team, and I had a teammate that was Black, and I didn't feel that I ever really noticed it until we went to play a team that was their entire team were actually all Black players, and there was a definite difference there. It was an eye-opening experience for me to realize that she looked more like them than she looked like the rest of our team. And realizing, I think that day, oh, you know what? We have an African-American girl on our team, and I didn't realize it until today. So back then we thought that was the right thing to do. And that was back in the late 80s. Now we realize, you know what, we want to be much more aware of those people, those around us, and be aware of history and how history has created some of those obstacles that we are truly trying to overcome right now. Being that I am a history teacher, I also, feel that it's really important for students to understand history and to understand, slavery. It really wasn't that long ago when we really think about how long ago slavery was. It's not that long ago. Or when we think about how long ago, it wasn't that long ago that we were segregated. And so just really trying to really understand and learn and research as much as we can is certainly going to help us help our kids and help our students. There are so many resources out there. We have books, we have short videos, movies, literature, but sometimes being able to actually hear a story from the person themselves, and that someone that is their age level is really, can really mean so much to a middle schooler. There is a link here. I actually I don't watch the show This Is Us. I don't know if any of you do, but this is from Lonnie Chavez, maybe. I'm not sure how to pronounce the name exactly. From the show This Is Us. And he speaks about his experiences. And I think it would resonate with our middle school students to hear from someone else that is their age. Just like books, oftentimes in our classrooms, Mrs. O'Connor mentioned, we talk about Rosa Parks, we talk about history and Martin Luther King and all these really important people that have helped pave the way for people of color today. However, looking for books that also have main characters that are middle school age, I think is really critical for this age level. For middle schoolers to read stories about a main character, their age, experiencing some of these atrocities, some of these, things that we as white people just don't know that experience. It's not something we will ever be able to understand because we are not able to walk in their shoes. We truly cannot walk in anyone else's shoes. We know that, right? No one can ever know our story unless they've walked in our shoes, and we can't really do that. So the best that I think we can do is to really read as many books and watch movies and short video clips of people that can tell us their stories. They can share their experiences with us, because that is, I think, how we are going to be able to learn the best about what they've experienced, is by really hearing their stories. There are some key terms that probably would be more for that middle school student. For example, ethnicity, implicit bias, and diversity. So I was talking earlier about how, oftentimes we don't even realize the bias that we have. And I myself have not realized until I've started really diving into this topic about some of that implicit bias I did not even realize I had. And so as the adult that's going to have these conversations with our students and our loved ones, right, to really take those hard looks at ourselves, even to say, do I have some of these implicit biases that I did not even realize? Because it could accidentally come out in some of those conversations we do have with our loved ones if we're not aware of them. So just being, mindful of that is really critical. And then, of course, diversity. We as classroom teachers have always wished for a diverse classroom. And depending on the areas in which we live, we're limited. I came from a very small town. I live in a very small town. So, the majority of my class was truly white. And so it's really difficult to even be able to understand the classroom dynamics when we have a more diverse group of students. And so those of you that live in the bigger cities that might have a more diverse population, you probably, you do have much more experience, really, truly, than even what I would in my smaller community. That's something that I wish that, that's just kind of the way the smaller towns oftentimes are. It's not nearly as diverse. And so really making it a point for, I feel the need to really make it a point of doing that additional research and diving deeper, because I'm not necessarily going to be able to experience it in my smaller community. Some of the books that I recommend for middle schoolers are, these have been out for, a while. They're fairly well known. I tried to find books that have both male characters and female characters to try and really interest all of our middle school students, whether, female, male. What type of a story it is. Some would be more in the classroom. The conflict is occurring in the classroom, and some of these stories, the conflict is occurring within the community. But again, I feel that all of these books would be great resources for you to really start encouraging your child to read stories that aren't just about a white student or a white child, but really encouraging more of a diverse type of reading as well. These would be great for them to read on their own, or if you wanted to read it with them or read it prior to them to make sure you feel comfortable with the storyline. I definitely encourage that. You could read it together and then talk about the experiences that those children are having within that book. That also can make a great discussion between you and your child. And then here are some resources for parents. So we talked about the idea of tolerance. And there's a little bit of explanation for what each of these resources will provide for you. The one that I thought was really helpful, I think, right here would be the 100 things you can say to your child to advance racial justice. It's kind of that conversation I had a little earlier where I said, we've given students the words to use when they're being bullied. I don't like the way that when you do that, it makes me feel type of, dialogue. So I think you might be able to find some great phrases that you can use with your child, that you can teach your child to use. And then I also really liked the Brown bookshelf. This is where you can find additional stories that really do involve a main character that has that is either brown or black, and who deal with some of the tough issues that we had been that I kind of mentioned in the other slide. And then the other one too is the Embrace Race. Here would be 31 children's books that really help support the conversations that you're wanting to have with your child. So I think these would be great ways for you as a parent and a teacher to begin first really with these types of resources, and then kind of go from there and see where your child might need that conversation to go. And being that they're at the middle school level, they might be able to do more leading of that conversation because they're to that age level. So I believe that is my last slide. So I'm going to turn it over to Miss Smith. Thank you, everyone.
Awesome. Thanks so much. I am not able to share my screen.
I can flip the slides for you if you would like. I don't know. I don't know if I can make you a.
Let's just do that. Keep it easy. Thanks. So I'm talking about speaking with our high school students about some of these more challenging topics. And so I just wanted to really be brief about this because I think that I'm just echoing a lot of the things that we've already said. And if you have high school students, quite frankly, it might be more on you as the parent to do a lot more of your own work and research so that you're keeping up with them. We had conversations today in my high school English classes, and my students know a lot more than I do sometimes about certain current events because they're so involved on social media. So I have linked in here the sources that I used, but I think that as parent, and I'm not a parent, but I can think of when I was a child and I was talking to my parents about things that were important to me. We don't want to lecture our children at the high school level, but as Mrs. Schmal said, just settle in for a conversation and be prepared to do that in a safe space with your child, because children learn from you and you will also learn a lot from them if you open up a space to chat. So that goes into the second bullet point there of just creating a safe space, as they say, a place to foster a candid conversation and have a dialogue. Let them know that it's okay to ask you questions. I think that a lot of times high school students are under the impression that they can't ask their parents questions, or maybe they're timid and shy to do that. The same rings true for us as teachers as well. Sometimes students are afraid to ask us candid questions. So let them be able to do that with you. Next slide, please. And just continuing on with that, Mr. Dewey's in here. Shout out to Mr. Dewey. He talks a lot, always about the growth mindset. And I think that it's really important that you have this growth mindset with really anything that you do, but especially with this equity and talking about race and just doing better. Or maybe you are a person of color and this is something that is important. This is so important. And so have that growth mindset still. It is hard work, but we all need to learn from each other. And a point that we were trying to make as we were creating this PowerPoint is to help our students, particularly the high school population, inform them of the magnitude and the gravity of what they say. So not lecturing, but using that growth mindset again of, when you say this, it can actually be misconstrued as that. Or we were talking about bullying. Help our students understand that just saying something isn't necessarily appropriate. And if they are out on social media, what are they saying? And how is that going to be perceived by other people? So make sure that you're aware of what they're doing and the conversations that they're engaging in as well, so that you can have a conversation with them again about, well, why are you saying that and where is that coming from? Again, listen, be prepared to hear their thoughts and their concerns, and you might have to have a really difficult conversation, but that's okay. That's what this is all about. And the final bullet point here on this slide is, I think, the most important. It's something that I'm having a discussion with my high school juniors with at the moment, is civil discourse. And let's talk to our students and children about strategies for respectfully disagreeing with opinions that don't match their own. And again, a growth mindset of not just shutting it down, like not the cancel culture, but using that as an opportunity to have a conversation. I think that that's something that's kind of scary that we're getting into, is let's just cancel this and shut it down. And we're not giving that time to say, well, why is this wrong? Why are we canceling? Why are we not supporting these ideas or these thoughts? And just making sure that we understand how to say, I do not like your opinion, and this is why. And instead of just like an ignorant, I don't want to talk to you, you're not my friend anymore, and calling names or having an emotional response, which is the easy thing to do, Yeah, exactly. Thanks, Mr. Dewey. Next slide, please. Cruising right along here. I don't know. I tried animating my slides. It didn't go well. There's always something I struggle with. I have some stuff on the slide. I'm not going to read this word for word to you, but it's just more so there to follow up. And then at the third bullet point, or number 3, there is talking about social media. and how that's really important to our students, and being involved and engaged, and talk to them about what it means to be an active participant in a social media community. Our students here at RVA are always, we're using everything as a teachable moment and how to participate in this community. So the same can ring through about engaging in social media and what do you do if you see something that you just don't appreciate. And of course, wow, this is a huge one. You are the example that your child follows. We've talked about this. You are your child's introduction into the world. What they see you do is as important as what they hear you say. So prejudice is something that's learned over time. And seeking out friends that have the same mindset as you is going to just breed that prejudice. And so we're looking to challenge racism and look for opportunities to stand up, demonstrate kindness. And that all starts at a young age, by having conversations and choosing diverse books and being empathetic people. So keep that in mind as well. Next slide, please. Yes, modeling is 100% the best teacher for sure. I think that that's the telltale sign of a great leader or teacher, is just not the person that says, oh, do as I say, not as I do, because we all hated that as children. Nobody respected that. So walk the walk and talk the talk for sure. Our high school students are reading a lot of different books, from adult all the way through, Ghost Boys is on this list if we're talking about YA books with social justice themes. So building equity and making sure that everybody has a voice. These are really great books. I have not read all of them. I have read quite a few of them. You'll see some that are maybe a little bit older than others. And then there's even one on there that's like nonfiction, such as Me and White Supremacy. So this is a pretty eclectic mix of books for students that want to read something that is more diverse for them. And I think that Mrs. O'Connor said something really thought-provoking at the beginning. It's just challenging your students or your children to read something that has a diverse crowd in it, not just sticking to what they know, because we're creatures of habit. If I'm not required to try a new food, I'm probably not going to do it. But if I try it and I don't like it, at least I tried it. I opened my mind up a little bit. I expanded. The same thing rings true for your high school students. What TV shows are they watching? And one caveat to that is it's not just a diverse crew of actors. It should be diversity in the experiences that they're having and the way that they are being treated. And again, social justice, it should be all inclusive in that regard, not just, oh, we cast a diverse crew of people, but we're treating them all the same. That's something to consider as well for when you're choosing books and shows and asking your children what they are consuming. Next slide, please. And the last thing that I'd like to say, because I know I want to be mindful of our time together here, is that our parents should be absolutely encouraged to do the work as well, but that can be a scary place to be, and maybe you don't know. And so if you walk away feeling overwhelmed tonight, or like you have a lot of work to do, I think that's exactly the right place that you need to be in, is just thinking, wow, I really have a lot to do or a lot to consider. And I don't think that we're looking for perfection here. We're just looking for progress and for you to ask questions of yourself so that you can do better for your children. So I did put together a list of books here for parents who would like to do a bit of reading on their own. And all of us came up with these books. There's some that stand out in our minds for sure, as like Trevor Noah, Born a Crime. That's talking more about South Africa. Or like, I know a huge book that a lot of teachers read is Why Are All the Black Kids Sitting Together in the Cafeteria? And so this is a really great list of books if you're just looking to expand your horizons and do some of your own reading on your own. I can say own more, I guess. Just doing the work independently. Oh, awesome. Okay, so my wife just read White Fragility and spoke very highly of it. Great. Well, we wouldn't be teachers if we didn't ask you to reflect in your practice and think of something that perhaps you'll come away from this talk tonight. Is we want you to just ponder for several minutes, what is one small change that you are going to make in the next month to start conversations about race in your home? So we'll take 2 minutes. It's 7:23 right now. We'll come back together at 7:25. And if there's any questions or comments, we will absolutely stick around and open up for a dialogue here. But we do want you to take a second to think about next steps from here. Wow, I'm loving these conversations. Tracy's going to read Me and White Supremacy, and that's absolutely a New York Times bestseller and has been, and now there's companion reflection journals. So I think that's great. And the Steele family said, I previewed PBS Kids program talking about race and keep forgetting to now show the kids. Also going to get the books from library as mentioned. Awesome. That is so wonderful. Thank you. I think those are great steps, and we are absolutely here for you in whatever way that we can support you. I think the disclaimer at the beginning is that we're all learning together. So whatever you need from us next, if you wanted to do a book study, or we are really looking for whatever it is that you need in this journey, and we're open to feedback. So please let us know what you would like to see next.
Yeah, and we just want to thank you guys for being here with us tonight. Feel free if you do have any questions, put it in the chat box. Otherwise, Mrs. Schmall, I think on the next slide, I put our email addresses. If you want to reach out to us personally, feel free to do so. But you may just want to take time to sort of explore the links in the PowerPoint when Tracy sends it out later. So feel free to let us know if we can help you in any way. We hope you all have a good night. And don't ever hesitate to reach out if you have other questions or things you want to discuss with us. So